Hello everyone, my name is Jake, and what I am about to share is something that changed my life forever. Up until that day, I was just an ordinary man, living without thinking much about what existed beyond this life. The future was something distant, and the idea of death had never really worried me. But then, without warning, everything changed. It was a normal day, with no sign of what was to come. I woke up as usual, went through my routine, and had no idea that in just a few hours, my life would take an unexpected turn. I died, but I did not disappear. Crossing over to the other side was the most real experience I have ever lived. And what Jesus showed me about the mysterious mark on our hands is something the world needs to know. That day began like any other. I woke up feeling good, had breakfast, and went through my routine without imagining that in a few hours everything would change. After lunch, I sat at my desk to continue working when a strange dizziness took hold of me. My vision started to blur, and then a sharp pain pierced my chest. My heart raced, and in a matter of seconds everything went dark. I could hear voices around me, but they sounded distant, almost like an echo. Someone was shouting my name, trying to bring me back, but I knew I was departing. My body was still in that room, but I was no longer inside it. The sensation was surreal, as if I were floating, light, yet at the same time aware of what was happening around me. The sound began to fade, as if I were underwater, and a cold feeling took over me. Then, absolute silence. It was at that moment that I realized I had died. What surprised me was that instead of feeling fear or despair, I was overcome by an indescribable calm. There was no pain, no anguish, only a profound peace I had never experienced before. I looked around, but all I saw was a dark void stretching out infinitely. However, in the midst of that darkness, something caught my attention. In the distance, a light appeared, gentle, warm, and welcoming, different from any light I had ever seen before. It did not hurt my eyes. On the contrary, it seemed to call me, drawing me in an irresistible way. I did not walk, I did not run, but I moved toward it, as if something greater were guiding me. And at the moment I stepped into the light, everything around me changed. The darkness completely disappeared, and suddenly I was standing. I was no longer floating, no longer feeling lost. The air around me seemed to vibrate with a living energy, charged with something I can only describe as pure love. Everything was incredibly calm, yet at the same time, I knew that something grand was about to happen. I looked at myself and realized I was no longer wearing the clothes with which I had died. My body seemed different, lighter yet complete. I felt no pain, no sign of weakness. It was at that instant that something caught my attention. It was not fear, it was not uncertainty. It was a feeling of being exactly where I was meant to be. And then I saw them. Before me, figures shone softly, standing a short distance away. They were not exactly human, but they did not seem strange either. I did not see them only with my eyes. I felt them. Their presence emanated something pure, a mixture of love, understanding, and a wisdom that went beyond anything I could explain. They did not speak, but I understood everything they transmitted. There was no judgment, only a deep acceptance. While I tried to comprehend what was happening, I felt a change in the environment. The light around me intensified, as if it were responding to my presence. And then a voice echoed inside me, without the need for words. It called me by name. Jake. It was strong, yet at the same time filled with love and compassion. I looked ahead, and there he was. Before me, enveloped in a light so intense it seemed alive, was someone I recognized instantly. His eyes were like nothing I had ever seen before, deep, full of wisdom, love, and a power that made my soul tremble. There was no doubt. It was Jesus. My legs gave way and I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by an avalanche of emotion. I could not speak, nor did I need to. He knew everything I felt. I realized that my life was about to be revealed to me in a way I could never have imagined. As I watched him, the space around us began to change. Time seemed to dissolve, expanding in all directions. Behind him, a tunnel of light began to form, pulsating with colors I had never seen before, gold, blue, and hues beyond human comprehension. Without the need for words, I knew I was being invited to move forward. The tunnel of light was not just a path, it was a revelation. As soon as I took the first step in its direction, I felt as if I were being carried, not by my feet, but by the very light that enveloped me. Everything around me disappeared, and before me, scenes began to form. They were not just memories. It was the story of my life unfolding before my eyes. Every moment, every choice I made, every word I spoke, everything was there. But it was not merely like watching a movie. I felt every emotion again. The times I showed love and compassion filled my soul with warmth and light. But the moments when I was indifferent or hurt someone, even without realizing it, struck me with a weight I had never felt before. It was not a condemnation, but a deep understanding that every small action generated an impact far greater than I had imagined. As the vision of my life continued, I understood something I had never stopped to consider. Every smile I offered, every word of encouragement I gave, every act of kindness, no matter how small, created ripples that spread far beyond what I could see. But the opposite was also true. The times I ignored someone in need, the harsh words I spoke without thinking, all of that also left marks, affecting people in ways I had never imagined. Then, when the last scene of my past faded into the air, I felt an even stronger presence by my side. I looked and saw Jesus watching everything with me, his expression full of love, but also of a profound truth. "This is not to punish you," he said without needing to move his lips. "It is to teach you." His words resonated in my being like an eternal echo. At that moment, I understood that my life had not been just a succession of random events. Every choice carried a weight, a purpose, and I was about to discover something even greater. Jesus raised his hand, and in that very instant, the environment around us began to transform. Before us, a new vision unfolded. I saw an immense river of light flowing through space as if it were alive. It stretched out infinitely, connecting everything and everyone. As I observed, I understood what it meant. It was the connection between all souls, the invisible web that united every action, every thought, every choice made on earth. Beside me, a radiant being approached. I knew, without anyone having to tell me, that it was an angel. He extended his hand toward the river of light and spoke to me without using words. Every gesture of love strengthens this flow. Every act of kindness echoes throughout all existence. My heart tightened with the weight of that revelation. I had always thought that my actions were merely fleeting moments, but now I saw that each one had an eternal impact. And at that moment, something even deeper was revealed to me, a truth about my own existence that would change everything I believed. Suddenly, I felt a new wave of energy around me, as if the universe itself were adjusting to reveal something even deeper. The angel stepped back, and Jesus turned his gaze directly to me. His look was not one of judgment, but of understanding, of a love so pure that it made me feel both small and immensely valuable. Then he did something unexpected. Jesus extended his hand and touched mine. At the moment our fingers met, an indescribable warmth ran through my being. It was not just a physical sensation, it was a direct connection to something greater. And then I saw. My own hands began to shine, and right in the center of my palm, something that I had always considered just a natural mark on the skin began to glow with a celestial light. That M that had always been there, but which I had never paid attention to, now pulsed with a much greater significance. I was about to discover what that mark truly represented and why so many people carried it without ever realizing its true purpose. As I looked at my hand, completely mesmerized by the glow emanating from it, Jesus smiled gently. "This mark has always been with you," he said, and his words were not only heard, but deeply felt within my soul. Images began to arise in my mind. Visions of people throughout history, prophets, healers, spiritual leaders, all carrying the same mark. It was not a mere trace on the skin, but a sign, a reminder that those who possessed it had a greater mission to fulfill. "This mark is not about power," Jesus continued. "It is about responsibility. It is a calling for those who have been chosen to spread light, love, and truth in the world." My heart raced. I had always carried that mark without ever thinking about its meaning. How many times had I ignored the call? How many opportunities had I let pass? The answer was clear before me. But before I could say anything, Jesus continued, "Many have it, but few truly see its meaning." My hands trembled as I absorbed what Jesus had just revealed to me. The mark I had always considered just an insignificant detail now carried a divine weight. "But why?" I finally asked. "Why me? What does it really mean?" Jesus looked at me with infinite patience and love. "Because even before you were born, you were chosen for a purpose," he replied. "But that does not mean the path would be easy. Free will gave you choices, and many ignore this calling." His words echoed inside me. How many times had I closed myself off from compassion? How many times had I passed by someone in need and ignored them? I had never known that every little action was part of something much greater. Then, before me, a new vision formed. I saw humanity, millions of people with the same subtle mark on their hands, without realizing its meaning. Some lived guided by love and light, others lost in fear and darkness. "This mark is a reminder," Jesus continued. "It does not make you special, but it reminds you of your true purpose, to live with love and guide others to the truth." My heart grew heavy with this revelation. I had never thought of my life in this way, as if there were a greater purpose than just existing, working, dreaming, and moving on. But now everything made sense. "So this mark is a call to serve?" I asked. Jesus nodded. "Yes, but true service is not about greatness. It is about love. The world is full of lost people searching for meaning, but many do not realize that they already carry a reminder that they were created for something greater." His voice was firm, yet it carried an indescribable tenderness. Then he raised his hand again, and another vision formed before me. I saw moments from my own life when I could have done more. Small acts of kindness I failed to perform, words of encouragement I kept to myself, people who passed by my way and whom I ignored. I also saw other moments when I chose love, and how these small decisions caused impacts I could never have imagined. Everything was connected. Every choice was like a stone thrown into water, creating ripples that spread far beyond what I could see. I stood there in silence, absorbing everything I saw. The weight of responsibility was immense, yet at the same time, a new clarity took over me. I understood that every person had the power to influence the world around them, and that the true mission of those who carried the mark was simple yet powerful: to love, guide, and illuminate the path for those who were lost. I looked to Jesus, seeking answers. And if we fail, and if we do not manage to live according to this calling? He smiled, and at that moment I felt a peace that dispelled all the doubts in my heart. "It is not about perfection," he replied. "It is about choice. Every day is a new opportunity to choose love instead of fear, compassion instead of indifference. You do not have to be perfect, just willing to walk with faith." His words touched my heart in a way I could never explain. For the first time, I saw my life in a completely different light. But then something changed. The environment around us began to transform once again, and I knew I was about to see something even deeper. The scenery around us dissolved like mist in the wind, giving way to something even vaster and indescribable. I was overcome by a feeling of lightness, yet at the same time by a presence greater than anything I had ever felt before. The very fabric of reality seemed to vibrate around me. Then before me appeared something that took my breath away, a glimpse of what I could only describe as heaven. It was not just a place. It was a living presence. The light around me did not come from a sun or any visible source, but it seemed to emanate from everything and everyone. The air carried a celestial sound, as if space itself were singing. It was different from any earthly music. It was a harmony that spoke directly to the soul. Before me, I began to see people. Some I recognized instantly. Family members who had already departed, their faces radiant with peace and joy. Others I did not know, but I felt an inexplicable connection with them. All smiled at me as if they knew something I was yet to understand. I wanted to ask, I wanted to understand what it all meant, but before I could speak, Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder. As soon as Jesus touched my shoulder, a wave of warmth ran through my being. It was as if all the love in the universe were concentrated in that single gesture. I did not need words to understand what he wanted to show me. Everything around me vibrated with a truth that went beyond human understanding. "This is home," he said, and his voice resonated within me like an eternal echo. "Here there is no pain, no fear, no suffering, only pure and eternal love." My eyes filled with tears. Never in my life had I felt such profound peace. I looked at the people around me. All of them seemed complete, whole, free from any anguish or regret. And then, for the first time, I understood what it meant to truly be home. But at the same time, I felt something inside me pulling in another direction. I knew that it was not yet my time. Before I could say anything, Jesus looked into my eyes and, in a gentle tone, said, "You still have something to do." My heart tightened. I wanted to stay. I wanted to remain in that place of love and peace, but deep down, I knew that my mission was not yet complete. Jesus stepped forward and, with a simple gesture of his hand, the environment around us began to change again. Heaven, with all its beauty and perfection, began to recede from me, as if it were being veiled by a new vision. In its place, I saw the earth, my world, the place from which I had come. That was when I understood. I had not yet finished my journey. I saw faces of people I did not yet know, but who in some way were connected to me. Some were lost, others carried pain in their eyes. Many were searching for answers they could not find. "You have been called to be a beacon," Jesus said, "to share what you saw, to remind people that they are not alone, that love is the greatest truth, and that every choice matters." My heart raced. How could I fulfill such a great mission? I was not perfect. I had failed so many times. But Jesus, knowing my thoughts even before I could verbalize them, simply smiled. "It is not about being perfect, Jake. It is about being willing." And at that moment, I realized that he was right. I did not need to have all the answers, nor be someone extraordinary. All I needed was to share what I had lived, to tell the world about the love I had experienced, about the truth that was revealed to me. The light around me began to change, and a strange feeling took over my body. It was as if I were being pulled back. My time there was coming to an end. The pull intensified, and before I could react, I felt my body being enveloped by an increasingly strong light. Heaven began to drift away, and that indescribable peace, though still present within me, seemed to recede. My heart wanted to stay, but my soul knew I had to return. In the blink of an eye, everything changed. The celestial warmth gave way to a cold and heavy sensation. The gentle sound of eternity was replaced by agitated voices. My chest ached. My body felt fragile and heavy. Then, as if breaking through the surface of water after a deep dive, I breathed. I heard shouts and murmurs around me. "He's back! He's breathing!" A strong pressure on my chest indicated that someone was trying to revive me. I opened my eyes and saw familiar faces, my family, doctors, nurses. The tears in their eyes showed how close I had come to death, but I knew the truth. I had truly died. And now, for a greater purpose, I had returned. It took me a few moments to process everything. My body was back, but my soul would never be the same again. It was then that something caught my attention. My hands were trembling, but when I looked at them, I saw the mark. The M that Jesus had shown me, the same that shone in his presence, was still there. Only now, I knew exactly what it meant. Lying there, still breathless, I felt tears stream down my face. What I had experienced was not a dream, nor an illusion. It was real, more real than anything I had ever experienced. I had been before Jesus, seen heaven, felt the presence of the divine, and now I was back. The doctors called it a miracle. My heart had stopped for several minutes, and according to medical logic, I should not have returned. But I knew the truth. My return was not a mistake, it was a calling. In the following days, my family and friends asked me if I remembered anything. At first, I hesitated. How do you explain something so grand in words so limited? How do you tell them that heaven was real, that God's love was greater than anything we imagine? But then I remembered what Jesus had told me. My mission was to share. So for the first time, I told my story. When I began to speak, the room fell silent. Every word seemed to carry a weight beyond myself, as if I were merely a messenger of something much greater. I recounted the moment of my death, the peace I felt as I left my body, the tunnel of light and the celestial beings that welcomed me. And then I spoke about him. At the mention of Jesus, I saw tears in some people's eyes. Others seemed shocked, trying to understand what I was saying. I described his presence, his gaze full of love, and the truth he revealed to me about the mark on our hands. "It has always been with us," I said, showing my palms, "but few realize its meaning. It is not just a trace on the skin, it is a reminder that we were chosen for something greater." Some looked at their own hands, as if seeing the mark for the first time. That was when I realized my mission was not to convince anyone, but to plant a seed. The rest did not depend on me, but on each one's willingness to see beyond what the eyes could perceive. From that moment on, my life was never the same. I could not simply return to the routine as if nothing had happened. I had seen the truth, felt God's love in a way that I could never ignore. So I did what I knew I had to do. I began to share my experience with the world. The first times I told my story were difficult. Some people listened with respect, others doubted, and some even laughed, thinking it was just the delirium of someone who had been near death. But that did not discourage me. Every time I spoke, I saw people touched by the message, people who looked at their own hands and felt in some way that it meant something greater. Over time, more and more people began to approach me, sharing their own experiences, speaking about how they too had felt called to something greater but never knew how to interpret it. That's when I realized that this story was not just mine. It was an awakening, a reminder to all of us that we are not alone, that there is a greater purpose waiting to be lived. Months passed and my story began to spread. People from everywhere sought me out, some searching for answers, others simply wanting to share that they too carried the mark and, in some way, always felt that it meant something special. I received messages from strangers, accounts of similar experiences, stories of miracles that once seemed unbelievable, but which now made sense within the grand divine plan. One day, after a lecture where I shared my testimony, a young man approached me. His eyes were filled with tears. "I always felt that I had a purpose, but I never knew what it was," he said. "After hearing your story, I feel that I have finally found an answer." Those words echoed within me. I knew exactly what he meant, because I too had spent years living without understanding my true purpose. But now everything made sense. It was not just about me, but about all of us. Every person who carried that mark, every soul searching for a greater meaning. We were all connected by something much greater than we could comprehend. Over time, I realized that my mission was not just to tell my story, but to remind people of something that had always been within them. The mark was not a privilege of a few, but a reminder for those who were ready to see. It did not matter where you came from, your age, or your belief. There was something that united us all. The truth that we were created to love, to serve, and to bring light to the world. Many people began to ask me, if this mark is a calling, what should we do? The answer was simple, yet profound. Live with love, I would say. Choose kindness every day. Help without expecting anything in return. Share the light within you. Jesus did not show me heaven just so I would know it exists, but so that I could remind others that it is within our reach, in every act of compassion, in every choice made with the heart. And so, what began as a near-death experience became a new life. I did not just survive, I was reborn with a purpose. And as long as I kept breathing, I would tell this story to anyone willing to listen. Now, whenever I look at my hands, I see more than just a detail on the skin. I see a reminder of the day my life changed forever. I see proof that I was sent back for a reason, and that each of us has a role to play on this journey. Perhaps you are hearing this story for a reason. Perhaps deep down, you have always felt that your life has a greater purpose, even if you could not explain it. I am here to tell you that yes, it does. It is not a coincidence. It is not luck. You were created with a purpose, and every choice you make, every act of love, every gesture of compassion is part of that greater plan. So now I ask you, what will you do with the time you have been given? Will you ignore the call, or will you open your eyes to the truth? The world needs more light, and perhaps you have been chosen to be a part of it. Heaven is real. God's love is real. And one day, we will all stand before that light again. But until then, there is work to be done. And if you want to continue discovering more about these hidden truths and revelations that many try to hide, subscribe to the channel right now. Every day we bring new stories, impactful testimonies, and deep reflections on what truly lies beyond this life. Hit the bell so you don't miss a thing, and share this message with those who need to hear it. See you in the next video.